Hello. To whoever just joined, we'll get started in a couple of minutes. We're just waiting for a couple of more people to join, and we'll start with a short reading and introduction. And we're just waiting for a couple more people to show up, and then we'll do a little bit of an introduction and a little bit of a reading, and we'll get started. So, as we're about to begin, I'm just going to give a little bit of an introduction of myself and a little bit of a background about what I'm going to be reading and why I chose to read it. So, I'm Athena. I am a poet and essayist. I was originally born in Northeast Ohio, but I currently live in Philadelphia. I've been living here for about 6 years. And I have a master's degree in poetry, but for the last few years I've really been writing essay wholly, and that's just because I found that it was an expansion of the poetic voice that I was already building. So the work that I'm going to be reading tonight, one piece is from my current essay collection, which is titled The Incredible Shrinking Woman, and the second piece is an essay that was just released in Grub Street issue 70 in May of this year. And both of these are both longer. I consider them like prose poetry in a way. I think that being a poet completely informs the way that I write my creative nonfiction. And because I'm a poet first, especially coming from open mics and slams, on top of having a master's degree in it, it helps me be able to figure out mouthfeel of essays. It helps me figure out cadence. It helps me figure out how I can best tell the story and immerse my readers without completely boring them because it's a longer form piece. So the first piece that I'm going to read is titled Lakeshore. This piece is included in my current essay collection, The Incredible Shrinking Woman, and there is a small content warning on it, and that's just because there are mentions of sexual assault. And really all you need to know is this takes place in approximately 2012, and it takes place in Chicago during the weekend visit to the Field Museum. Lakeshore. Somewhere in a man's memory in Chicago, I'm nothing more than failed head in a hotel room. I can picture him sliding the bulk of his body into his car after the valet brought it round for him. I can see him disappearing into the streets of the city while I am left behind, shaky and trying to catch my breath. He is escaping his actions, poloed down from the width of his shoulders to the bottom of his feet. I am there, balanced on the edge of a bed in the W Lakeshore, a bowl of congee and creme brulee warming on the desk. Soon after, the condensation of a Coke slides a glass around my palm, trembling from my gulps. I am trying to stop my skin from burning. The back of my neck still hums from the press of his hand. I tell him, I can't. I'm on my period. He is unfazed, standing and pushing his pelvis toward my face. That hand, heavy not in weight but in tension, is barely a whisper against my body, but I know the pressure of him willing my head forward towards his unbuckled jeans. The printed rim of his boxer briefs. Polo, too, peeks out at me like a black hole threatening to swallow me in my entirety. He doesn't say anything, his body screaming for pleasure in ways I am unwilling or able to provide. I'm supposed to be in Chicago only to visit the Field Museum, not to meet up with a man I've only known through Tumblr. When I drove the hours between Ohio and Illinois, I daydreamed about uncovered bones and new memories of old things. I thought of water lapping against shores and room service, anything to forget that in this city my marriage began to crumble. Instead of sticking to my plan, I make him my first stop and push the museum to the next day. I invite him to my room, one that overlooks the lake and the pier jutting from its shore, to put a face to a name. It's hard now to separate my intentions from his desires, and even harder to erase the hum of his touch from my skin. After he leaves, I scrub myself clean in the hotel bathtub, gliding the white bar of soap across the parts of me he's touched, until I feel too slick to safely exit. I sit there wondering when my body will feel like my own, when I will stop doling it out for scraps of warmth that are soon snatched and shattered like amber before me. I don't sleep that night, but the following morning I find my way through the middle passage, pitching my body through the dark of the exhibit. In the haziness of the middle passage in the mock ship, I am frightened by the ghostly shadows of slaves stenciled into the walls. I squint, trying to find them more solid than memory. I feel sick to my stomach. There's something about this space that sets my heart to pounding and makes me dizzy. I want to escape these ghosts, escape the eerie silence changed only by the creak of my sneakers against wooden planks. I can only hold on to the fact I am steadily moving forward. I know there is another patron several steps behind me, and he is just as dizzy if his footsteps are any indication. I hear the drunken pattern of him trying to find the wall and know he is looking for any sliver of light that will guide him out of this darkness. I am adjusting my eyes, learning how to see through a pitch black that seems endless. I move forward toward sound, maybe a human voice or two. I do not want him to catch up to me. I am overwhelmed enough without the scent of his cologne in my nostrils or his shoulder brushing mine. But I hear him, and the space is getting smaller and smaller. My steps are even more unsure. I want to buckle, to collapse down into the nearest corner until he passes and my breath evens. But I feel ashamed. Ashamed because he is not the one who is still looming in the corners of my hotel room and my now tarnished memories of the city. Ashamed of my fear because his nearness is nothing. Or I tell myself it is. I say, no man has ever raped you. Assault doesn't count. I rationalize and rank penetration higher than unwanted touching. I convince myself things could always be worse. I say, at least you weren't washing the taste of him out of your mouth or the blood from your thighs. I feel the fear at my back like wind and slow enough to let the man pass. I pretend to be interested, maybe enraptured by the eyes staring out from all around me. I stay there, pushing and pulling shaky breaths until I am alone in the dark. I want to press my palm against the wall to steady and connect, but this is a museum, and even in my fear I am respectful. But I tuck that fear now and concentrate on pulling one foot in front of the other, knowing that in the morning this memory will be only a skyline in the rearview mirror. I keep moving until at the end of the tunnel there is finally a light. I stumble out into the Jim Crow South with the soul sign standing as a welcome and a warning. And so the second piece that I'm going to read is directly tied to my master's work when I earned my MFA in creative writing. My research thesis during that time was about phonetic intensives being used as building blocks of poetry and how the way we form the language in our throats, our mouths, and between our teeth and on our tongues can impact poetry and how people kind of come into it. And so this piece is directly tied to not only a personal experience, but also using the idea of phonetic intensives to express how this interaction went. And the only thing you really need to know about this is that the essay takes place in Northeast Ohio. I am 18 at the time, and I'm the passenger in a car. You have the right to remain silent. We start at the beginning, learning how to breathe, then speak, then shout. We learn the pitch and volume of our voices, our power, and how tone makes the world move or grind to a halt. Yet, how this language is formed is foreign. How we lose it is too. We do not know our own tongues. In linguistics, the mouth matters. The throat matters as much as the lips and the tongue. These things determine how the words are formed, tells the listener the intention behind them. Fricatives, the sounds forming vibrations against the vocal cords like trembling, move the air into what we hear. Hard, ahead, save, rise. We find these words between the roofs of our mouths, between our teeth and lips, the lengths of our throats, and against again the tongue. We siphon in the air, then let it back into the atmosphere. Changed. An officer's voice unfurls from his throat and echoes out between the rain and the engine of the car. He must know the power of language and how it barrels from his chest, pulls itself between his lips before it breaks the world around it. There must be an understanding of how all this works because this is how it begins. It's like time slows down and I can hear every single inhale and exhale as he shouts the words again. Throw the keys out of the car. Put your hands on the dash. Do not move. I curl my fingers against the burgundy dashboard, but the sweat on my palms and the shaking of my arms makes it hard to keep still. I'm afraid. If my arms, vibrating like words stilled in throat, could talk, they would say, I am not a threat. They would rise until my fingertips skimmed the headliner, and behind us, halfway out his car and shielded behind his cruiser door, the officer could see my hands are empty. I follow directions, not willing to shift my eyes to my best friend beside me. I am unwilling to speak. Perhaps I have forgotten how. We stare straight ahead into the rain. The drops plop and splash on the white paint, the cracked asphalt of the road ahead, and my forearm nearest the open window. There is a breeze, cool and full of the rustle of leaves. Fricatives are only air. They are only breath finding its way among the structure of our mouths once we know where to place all the parts. Imagine, at the beginning of language, how this was once simply breathing until someone pushed beyond. Breathing is instinct. Fight or flight is instinct. I forget how to breathe until my chest burns, until I'm choking back tears as 3 more sirens sound across the distance. 1 behind, 2 beside, 1 ahead. 4 is a fricative. It leaves me breathless. Backup, which crested over the hill like the cavalry, does not save us. They bring more guns and the same words even after the keys have splattered with the rain on the street. The officer appears then, ruddy and dark-haired, with a pistol in his hand. He is still standing in the power of his words, still shouting for us to remain unmoving. Another appears on the opposite side, palm splayed on his holster. I do not yet know his voice. This one opens the passenger side door again. Fricatives do not matter here. This is body language. This is the pressure of fingers against wrist bones, a hand on a spine, a top of boots against shoes. He presses my palms flat on the still warm hood, spreads my legs wide. The wash of hands and rain knocks me silent. It takes the breath from my throat. Plosives choke the words from our bodies. They block the flow of air, so we sacrifice breath for communication. Witness, exhaust, stopped, gone. I am breathing now, slow and steady as I can in the rain with 2 guns trained. The silent officer, a face no longer holding space in my brain, finishes his search and leaves me palms down, eyes down, with instructions not to move. Communication. Words and sounds and static crackle out across radios. License plate numbers, dates of birth, names. There is no room beside me for another body. The spread of my arms is too wide, as are my legs. In the loud officer's car, there is still language. There is dryness and whiteness and whispers. She is delicate. bright green eyes, a smattering of freckles, and waves of hair skimming her tiny body. Queen is a plosive. Academia says language matters because we all agree to a common grammar, like suspect. Lawrence Perrine tells us in Sound and Sense that sound does not exist for its own sake, rather it is there as a support and a vehicle of meaning. Sometimes the sound doesn't matter. How we interpret it does, like bank, robber, and flee. Language directs us how to act. It moves our limbs as much as our mouths. It fires our brains into action. It surrounds us as much as it shelters us. I know when to speak. I know when to forget. I forget now and let sound be rain and laughter and small talk. Silence lets me piece together the story. To him, the voice from the beginning, we have been evasive, defied his commands to pull onto the gravelly shoulder. I remember the truth. I remember the first sight of the light bar in the rearview mirror, the steady pace of my friend's foot on the gas pedal. We waited for him to pass, then waited for the sirens and lights. He rolled closer, close enough we drifted from the road and beyond the white stripe to let him pass. Then lights, sirens, the beginnings of language leaving my body. She threw the keys out of the car and gripped the wheel until her fingers looked like ghosts. Affricatives are a bridge. They stop the air and blend into words between the teeth, tongue, and lips. Choose, jet, catch. They can be voiced or voiceless. Voiced affricatives vibrate as the sound is produced, welling up and out of the body like a spring. Agenda is an example. A voiceless affricative needs only air, like gesture. The beckoning of fingers tells me I can remove my palms and release the tension from my spine. Tells me to linger in the rain while I am pulled back to the beginnings of language, trying to move air into words. The voiceless question, too. Dispatch. The voice between the crackles put a description into his ear, tells him of a robbery from which a car had fled. Had I a voice, had I less fear, I would question the validity of a duo of high school girls in a white Buick Century casually driving the speed limit down a country road matching the culprits. He does not tell us who he is looking for. We only know that he is looking. The loud officer wants to catch me in a lie, so he starts by not speaking with me. He asks my friend instead. The common grammar is at play here, ascribing character to words to build a picture you want to see. It is an accepted foundation that says words do not only convey meaning, they are a way to reinforce meaning. Words have power, of manifestation and sway and accusation, of conviction and interrogation. 4 is a fricative. It is also the number of ways you can determine what a word can mean. Control the sound and meter to put emphasis on what's important. Who is she? How do you know her? Are you okay? Control the speed of vowels and consonants and the disposition of pauses. You know. You can tell me if you don't feel safe. This is your friend. Choose sounds and group them so they are euphonious or cacophonous to the ear. The sing-song way his questions perk up at the end like friendship. All you have to do is tell me the truth, right? Choose words that suggest their meaning, except I'm still trying to find my language when the two of us find ourselves back inside the car, seatbelts buckled, with an escort to the edge of town. Maybe escort means something else. A caravan, a convoy, an usher away from where I don't belong. Again, academia tells us what we need to know. Culture refers to the process by which some particular kinds of learning are spread from person to person and minds become coordinated into shared patterns. This is culture at the edge of a small town, a small cadre of officers just across a line, a friendly warning about returning. Still bank robbers on the loose. The right to remain silent about it all. The right to breathe again when the vibrations and the breath return. Thank you. So I'll just give you a little bit of a background about how poetry for me enters into creative nonfiction, just to see if anyone has any questions. And if so, just go ahead and put them in the comment box below and I will answer them. So I mentioned a little while ago that I'm a poet by trade, but I've been writing creative nonfiction for a few years now, and poetry has built such a solid foundation for that creative nonfiction, because poets, we have to make such good use of the space that we have on the page, that we have to make sure our words and our language are succinct and that we are making words do double duty. So I've always approached essay the same way, that I know that there's a lot more space that you can use to create an essay versus a poem, but if every word is not doing its due diligence, if every word or the end of every word is not pulling you into a next line like a poem does in a stanza, then it's not necessarily like the avenue that you want to go down. And so I make sure that everything that I write as a creative nonfiction essayist has the same kind of mouthfeel that it would as a poet. So I read everything aloud as I write, just as I would do poetry. I find the natural pauses in the things that I write. I find whether or not there are too many similar sounds that are bumping up against each other in the paragraph or a line. And I really approach it as if I was going to be making sure people heard this aloud and they weren't just reading it in a book. So poetry has 100% always been my first love, but it's helped me really branch out into other genres. And if you are a person who writes fiction, creative nonfiction, personal essays, I would highly suggest inputting your poetry into the actual work that you're doing, because it makes it so much richer. So thank you very much, Juniper. I appreciate it. So I don't see any questions. Yeah, so I do also have a poetry chapbook out. It's called the No God in This Room. It came out in 2018. It's a small chapbook of about 20 poems or so, and it's no longer in print, but I do have copies if anybody ever wanted to have one. There are some samples of my poetry on my website, which is just my first and last name, AthenaDixon.com, and it takes you out to some of my poetry as well as my creative nonfiction. I really want to say thank you to the people who came to listen tonight, and I hope you all have a really great evening. Have a good night.